Thank you for the introduction. I did have a slide just introducing myself as well, just in case you didn't know who I was. I'm a technical agile coach with Pragma. I speak at conferences. I live in Sweden, but I grew up in the UK. And I wrote this book, the Coding Dojo Handbook, a few years ago. And maybe I should put the GitHub thing up here. I have lots of katas on my GitHub page. This isn't really a talk about that, actually. This is a talk about architecture. Now, this is a beautiful piece of architecture. This is a church in Barcelona that is still under construction. I put this here because it demonstrates why architecture is such a bad metaphor for software. Because the architect who did the design for this church, La Sagrada Familia, was a guy called Gaudí. He's very famous. And he was the original architect on this project. And he started building this in 1883. And he died in 1926. And they are still building the church according to his architecture plans. It's the same, he would recognize this. Whereas in software, you can't do that. You can't architect a piece of software and then disappear. It just doesn't work like that. So this is a terrible metaphor. I think when I was a young software developer 15, 20 years ago, we had architects in this big organization I worked in. And they were these kind of distant, superior figures who kind of came down from their cloud occasionally to hand out documents. And this was great. I'm sure they were extremely nice and competent people, but they didn't really help me very much. Their aim, of course, was to help me to make good choices in my software development. They gave me standard tools to use and architectural patterns and stuff I didn't really understand. And they didn't write any code anymore. So this was what I thought an architecture was, an architect. And now, standing before you 20 years later, I'm one of these technical leaders. I'm not an architect, maybe, but actually, no, I much prefer this word technical leader. This seems to me to encapsulate what I'm supposed to do now much better. I still have the same aim as these old-fashioned ivory tower architects. I want developers to make better choices in their daily work. I want to help everyone to be more productive and efficient, and in the organization as a whole to make it easy for people to move between teams and projects and products. So this is, I think, the modern term for an architect is a technical leader. So in this 20 years of my career so far, we've had the whole agile thing come along and become huge and change the way we build software. And this is another reason this architect metaphor just doesn't work. We don't build software like that, like you build a building. We build it in small iterations and we're constantly improving it. So I have this story to illustrate what I think agile is about. This is a tweet exchange between an owner of a Tesla car, and he's complaining that he can't get to the supercharger to charge his car because people have left their car there using it as a parking space. And Elon Musk, the owner of Tesla, writes on Twitter and says, yeah, we should do something about this. So that's surprisingly enough, that we've got this direct contact with the customer. That's a key feature of Agile, by the way, actual contact with the customer. But the most surprising thing I think about the story is what happens afterwards. Just 6 days later, Tesla rolls out an update to all of the cars over the air. And this means that if they are actually parked at a charging spot and the car is already fully charged, they get charged an idle fee, 40 cents a minute, which is kind of expensive for parking, if your car is already charged. So of course people move their cars when it's already charged, and this solves the problem. So this is what agility is about. It's being able to have enough of a good contact with your customers to understand what they need and to deliver it in a timely manner. So these days, we're all working in agile projects, and we have agile teams, and what we mean by an agile team. I've got quotes from Scrum and Extreme Programming and from SAFe, and they all agree, I think, that agile teams are self-organizing and cross-functional, which is great. And this is when I go into organizations in my work today, I find a lot of agile teams that are self-organized and cross-functional. So this is great. But the original thing with agile was really that it was all about one team delivering software. And these days, we have many teams all delivering software in the same organization, generally different parts of the same product or the same family of products. And you start to have cross-cutting concerns when you've got more than one team in the same organization, whether they're actually working on the same product or not. So I've got different kinds of teams here with different parts of the value stream. Maybe some are dealing with the infrastructure, some back-end services. So this is what I see in organizations I work with. And this kind of works. But my question then is, well, how do we do technical leadership in this kind of environment? And there are some good things being written about this. Communities of practice and making things standardized, kind of. But more recently, I've been very interested in DevOps and continuous delivery. Now, this book has been on several people's slide decks already this conference. So if you're not getting the hint yet, I hope you're getting it now. This is an excellent book. You should definitely read it. The book is about some research that's been ongoing for several years, thousands of data points, real scientists, statisticians involved in designing these surveys. And this is the best kind of science around DevOps that I've really come across. They have a few really interesting conclusions, the most important of which is that what we do as software developers matters for the success of our organization. I know what we do actually leads to whether our organization will make a profit and be successful. That is huge, because 20 years ago they didn't think that IT was relevant. We were just a cost center. Now it's proved we matter for generating value for our businesses. So this is great. We are winning. The next thing about the research that really interests me is they talk about all these actual technical practices that lead to success as measured in the real world, in real companies. So I think that's really interesting. And perhaps unsurprisingly, if you've been paying attention, they discover that things like continuous delivery and trunk-based development and having a loose coupling and high cohesion in your architecture, these things actually matter. This is good. We've been doing these things for years, and now we know they work. But one thing from this book that stood out to me, one of the things that contributes to success, was empowered teams. Not simply cross-functional or self-organizing teams, but empowered teams, and they helpfully actually define what they mean by that. So an empowered team is one which can make large-scale design changes to the software they're working on without any detailed coordination outside of the team. They can deploy their software on demand, and they do their own testing. So this sounds like a fantastic team to work on. And it sounds like it would be a great way to deliver value in an organization. But then I put my technical leader hat on and think about this and kind of like, yeah, what could possibly go wrong with this? You know, this sounds like it would be fantastic if it worked, but this does sound risky. So I'm looking at my landscape of agile teams and thinking, well, what would it take to turn them into empowered teams? Well, I could just give them all these properties that it says in the DevOps report and then see what happened. But I can kind of imagine what will happen is that over time we'll get competing standards, data fragmentation, inconsistent user experience, code duplication, wasted effort, unhappy developers, and then they'll all come and shout at me. this is not what I want. So I need to find a way to be a technical leader in a landscape where I have teams that are becoming empowered, and to try to stop that from becoming complete chaos. So I'm pretty convinced that this old model of the architect in that ivory tower dictating things this is completely dead. In this new world, teams are empowered and they're going to be deciding stuff for themselves. We have to take this away and get down to business with the teams, I think. So the kind of technical leadership that I'm thinking is going to work in this new world of empowered teams is that we have the leaders kind of, they're not dictating from on high, they're kind of down there in the midst of things. And whatever they do, they have to support the teams, not slow them down. That's got to be crucial, because if we do anything and try and dictate anything that will slow them down, they're just going to ignore us. So I think the way forward for a leader in this kind of landscape is to start to see yourself as somebody who brings gifts. You bring gifts of advice, because the technical leaders have a lot of experience to draw on. They've done a lot of software development. They can give a lot of useful perspective to development teams and offer that as a service. They can offer convenient libraries, stuff that they are actually going to say, oh yeah, that's useful, I would like to use that. Thank you for building me this test framework or this domain library or whatever it was. And likewise, we can give them tools. We can give them deployment tools and pipelines and all sorts of useful stuff around the edges of what it is they're actually building for the business. So I think I don't have all the answers about this is some ideas, but I'm fairly sure that fundamentally as architects or technical leaders, we are giving gifts, not dictating things or trying to govern anyone. This is a fundamentally different attitude. So I worked in an organization that was moving to DevOps and was trying to have these empowered teams. I was one of these technical leaders. So as myself, I didn't have any responsibility for actually delivering features into production. My job was to help all the developers in the teams to produce software more easily, produce features more easily. So my speciality in this group of leaders was the test automation framework. So we had microservices and we had deployments, frequent deployments and all this stuff. And we needed a way to test a whole scenario across several services. So I built this test framework. And I'm very proud of what I produced in this time. And I helped them to use it. I showed them how to use it. I delved into how they were working and tried to produce something that would be helpful for supporting their way of working. And I think I did a fairly good job. If I did this again, though, I would not do everything quite the same. I think I've learnt more now. And the biggest thing I would change is the fact that I was working on my own most of the time. We had the architects in a kind of in their own team space, and we did not spend enough time with the development teams. That's my biggest regret from this time. I think what I've learned since then is that it pays to really understand your customer in an agile or XP sense, and my customer in this organization was the development teams. So let's talk a little more about agility. I have a good analogy I want to share with you. So agility is about responding to change, as I explained in the Tesla story. We want to make sure that we can make updates with good quality. So I want to make an analogy with baking. So we've got, I like baking. So we've got a request for a cake, like you get a request for a software feature. It's been decided that this thing needs to be built. We need this cake. How long is it going to take? How agile can I be making this cake? Well, the first factor affecting how long this will take is, of course, how complex is this cake? is it got loads of layers and different kinds of icing and stuff? Or is it just some muffins for my child's football team? You know, this is going to make a difference for how long it's going to take me to make this thing. And it's, of course, the same with software. Some features are harder than others, and that's kind of a given. But that's not the only factor that's going to affect how long it's going to take. There's more factors, and the next one I want to highlight is how skilled is the chef who is making that cake. And this is clear when you look at a show like Bake Off. You must have a French equivalent. France baking competition. Yes, I'm sure you have it. Yeah, so you get this case where you get the hopeless baker they have to make whisk some eggs, and they can't separate them, and they have to do it again and throw millions of eggs in the trash. You know, it takes them longer because they're not very skilled, and I think it's the same skill and ability to use tools, knowing how to use the thermometer and you know, things like that. That cooking, there's so much tools involved in cooking. It's great. So this is the same with software. We need to have skill at creating software and using the tools that we have. And if we lack that skill, we will be slower. The best developers I know can develop software very quickly and efficiently with good quality. So this is obviously a factor as well. But the last factor I really want to highlight here is the kitchen that you're doing your baking in. So in the baking competition, you have this fantastically clean kitchen with all these sparkling work surfaces. All the ingredients are there for you, and the tools are just to hand. And this is going to mean that you can work a lot faster than if you have to kind of, like in my kitchen at home, delve through the cupboard to try and find the whisk, or have to kind of clear up all the washing up that's in a pile that somebody left in a corner. Have teenagers. So these things happen, but I think the analogy works with software as well. In software, the kitchen is a little less tangible than this. We've got tools, we've got test infrastructure, we've got pipelines, we've got test data. That's all part of the working environment for your software developer. But really, one of the most important factors is the existing code that you're building stuff in. You spend so much of your life reading the existing code. It's part of your working environment, and it often can be rather messy. So we want nice, clean code. You will work much more quickly and effectively in clean code with good tools, modern tools that are prepared for your use. So that's the three factors that I want to highlight for both baking and software, that it's a combination of these factors which will affect how agile you can be. And I want to basically define technical agile or technical agility as the kitchen. And this is you're paying attention to the environment the developers are working in. And as a technical leader, I need to try and make sure that that kitchen is as fantastic as possible, so that those developers can go into it and develop that fantastic software with everything to hand that they need. And also to make sure that my developers get some good skills. So this is, for me, what agility is about. It's having the right kitchen, the right infrastructure, and the skilled people, so you're not slowed down by having a lack of those things. So I'm going to go back to this thing about, as a technical leader, I want to make it easy to make good decisions. I want to say, if you are going to develop some features, I'm going to provide you with a standard kitchen that is standard for this organization. It's got all the tools you're going to need. That's your storage, that's your deployment pipeline, this is your testing framework. If you need different tools, if you're having a barbecue and suddenly I need to get you a fire thing, then okay, let's talk about that. Maybe they need some very special kind of database or something that isn't in the standard kitchen. Then we can have a conversation about why they need that and try and work out if we can accommodate it. But you try and make the standard setup so easy and convenient that that's what most of the teams are working in. So in order to make sure that you've built a great kitchen for the developers, you need to understand their context. You need to understand what they're trying to build and what kind of tools they need. And you need to communicate and teach them how to use all the tools that you've put in their kitchen. I'm thinking of the thing where you discover that your developers they're trying to whisk some egg whites, and they found a fork in a drawer, and they're whisking them with a fork. And you're like, did you not notice that and if you open this cupboard, there's this enormous whisk machine here. You just have to take it out and plug it in. And this, you can get this effect that developers are not using the fancy tools because they don't know they're there or they don't know how to use them. So you have to help with that part too. So this is all about the kitchen. And I now am going to do a radical switch of topic and go to mob programming. I'm gonna get this back to the same topic again. Bear with me. Mob programming. Now this, if you haven't heard about mob programming, this is a structured collaboration for a team of software developers coding together. And Woody Zuhl, who is here and is fantastic, he's not in this room, but he's at this conference. And he said, this is all the brilliant people working on the same thing at the same time, in the same space, on the same computer. And this is a good definition of something that he pioneered. If you've done any pair programming, which is two people collaborating on the same computer, then you should understand what this is, basically. Mob programming is like pair programming, only with more people. It's the same idea of you're collaborating and the code is not the product of just one or two of those people, it's the product of the whole team working together. Now, in a pair, you can be quite informal about the way you work, and it can still be brilliant. But in a mob, I think you need a little more structure. So mob programming usually defines some roles, and you rotate those roles frequently while you're working together. So the most obvious role is the driver. That's the person with the keyboard, and that person is typing in the code into the computer. Now, the driver is not supposed to type what they themselves have thought of. They are supposed to be following the instructions from the navigator. So the navigator is a very important role. This is the person who is telling the driver what code to write. The mob members generally are quiet unless they don't understand something, in which case they ask for an explanation, because in a very short amount of time they will become the navigator, so they need to know what's going on. If the navigator gets stuck or confused, the mob helps the navigator. And this is basically how the mechanics of mob programming works. There's an additional role which is optional, which is the coach. And the coach or the facilitator is not really a member of the mob. They're there to keep everything running smoothly. More on that in a minute. I should also mention the important rule that everyone in the mob must agree to, that in this mob, we treat everyone with kindness, consideration, and respect. And that is, if you are not able to uphold this rule, then you probably should take a little time out until you're calm enough to come back and uphold these rules. And this is really the key to making the collaboration work. We have to treat each other well. And if you get this, you get a mob that's working well, it can be very effective and fun to work in. So this is important. Now, if you want to find out more about mob programming, I would like to recommend these books. Now the book, sorry, I just had a thing come up on my screen. Back. So the book here is by Woody Zuhl on the far side, and that is an excellent resource about mob programming. This other book is actually the same book. It has two authors, and they started writing it together, and what they've written so far is excellent. They have had a disagreement, and now it's in conflict. So you can download the book from either of the authors. But I do think what they've written so far is worth reading. This is a picture from Woody's book, just so you can get the idea of what mob programming looks like. You have a group of programmers. That's Woody standing at the back, coaching. They have one keyboard that's actively being used to type in code to the computer. They have other computers around in case you want to do a bit of research on the side. There are more keyboards, so everyone can have their own setup. If you turn it around and look from the other side, you can see you've got a huge screen. I think it's the same screen duplicated, so everyone has a really good view of the code. You've got comfortable chairs, you've got whiteboard to hand, you've got their team task board with the sticky notes on one side. So this is really the area where the team is working. They have everything they need to do software development. Of course, people then complain, well, this must be really unproductive. And it's really hard to measure productivity, particularly if you're trying to use something stupid like story points. It's really very debatable whether you can say that mob programming is less productive than anything else. But you can talk about, well, what are all the things that make you less productive, and see whether perhaps mob programming might help with those things. And I'm thinking of context switching. You know, if you're in the mob, everyone's working on the same thing, less interruptions. The requirements are bad. Well, with everyone in the mob together, hopefully somebody understands the requirements. Bad code. You can find some really horrible code that's slowing you down, that kind of pile of washing up that you just kind of discover. And you can think, well, yeah, that's going to slow us down, but with any luck, the person who wrote that code is still in the mob, and they understand how it works. And if you're not lucky enough for that, then at least you have everyone in the mob's brain power to understand this code. People being off sick becomes less of a problem because the mob holds the knowledge about what you're working on. Lacking credentials. I'm thinking here if you're trying to log into some test environment or get some data from some database and you don't have a password. Again, somebody in your team is going to have that password, and it doesn't slow you down. So you can kind of argue that mobbing might not be as unproductive as you first thought, because you avoid some of these sources of unproductivity. But let's look at some of the advantages, and this is really where I want to focus, because when you're in the mob, one of the things that happens is that everyone in the mob understands that code that you're working on. They have to, because everyone is being rotated through that navigator role, and so they've contributed to it. And for this to happen, the team needs to learn to collaborate and agree on a design and an approach. You have to agree on some coding standards and how to design this thing. This is all very valuable for your team to improve the teamwork, and everyone is on board with what you produce. That's a big advantage. The next advantage I want to highlight is the way the mob becomes a skill multiplier. And I'm saying if one person knows a thing, the mob needs that thing, then very soon everyone in the mob knows that thing. So the example here is the navigator knows something about Kubernetes, and perhaps they're the ops experts in the team. And they're saying to the driver, okay, I want you to configure the pod with 150 megabytes of memory, open this YAML file and type this, you know. So perhaps they're the only person in the team who really knows Kubernetes, but they've just explained in words what it is that needs to happen. And then the driver has typed it in, so everyone in the mob has seen that code both be explained and have it written in front of them. So they understand what's happened. And this is a great way for them next time. Hopefully they'll be able to do this for themselves. The other thing you do in a mob is you usually hold a short retrospective where you review the things you learned, as well as the fact that everyone can ask questions, say, why are we using this YAML file and not that YAML file, and you know. So this skill multiplying effect of a mob is something that I've observed and really appreciate. The other thing I've observed about the mob is that if you're a visitor, perhaps you're an experienced software developer, but you've never worked with this team before and you've never seen their code before, you can still be very helpful in a very short amount of time. You don't actually need to know everything about their language or their tools or their frameworks. They know that stuff. If you're an experienced developer and you've worked on software before, you will have something to give. And very quickly, you can start to be an asset and not just an observer. Particularly if the mob already works and collaborates very well together, it's very easy to step in. So I've just spent a few slides introducing mob programming, and I hope you can see where I'm going with this, because these are the three advantages I've highlighted. Everyone understands the code, skill transfer within the team, visitors are quickly contributors. Now, this is a talk about technical leadership. And basically, I'm saying the context of a mob is a fantastic place to be a technical leader. You can very quickly start to become, help those developers to make better choices in their daily development work. So what I'm suggesting is that a technical leader should spend at least some of their time joining the teams as they mob program. And this is something that I've been doing lately. I've been going through several teams in an organization. I'm there to encourage and assist those teams. I'm there and I can visit many teams without taking away their empowerment. They are the ones who are making their code. I'm there to help them in their daily work. And this is really valuable because I can see the environment that they're working in. I can see directly some of the problems they're facing. And then when I go away and build a kitchen for them, I have a much better picture of what they need in their kitchen. And so that's one thing. I can understand their needs very well because I'm working with them. I can see them coding. And this across several teams, so I don't end up building something that's just for one team. I can spend a few hours with a lot of teams in quite a short space of time, a number of weeks, and then I can use what knowledge I've gained from that to build something really useful. And then I can also use the same forum to teach them stuff. So if they've got some tools in their kitchen that they're not using very well, I can step into their mob and help them to use them. And this is seems to me a superpower for a technical leader in an organization with empowered teams. So I said I've been doing this lately. My coaching role at the moment is largely to encourage test-driven development. This is a key practice for agility, having this evolutionary design technique that produces regression tests. So I will be in the mob and I will be encouraging them to take small steps, to write tests first, to do refactoring regularly. I will often step into the navigator role if they get stuck and don't know how to write a test. I will step into that role and show them directly, this is what I want you to do. I want you to start with the assert. The length of the list should be 2. Write that in the assert. Now do the act step, call the detect duplicates method. Okay, that doesn't compile, we need a arrange step. So I can code with the team and take advantage of this skill multiplying effect of the mob. If I can step into the navigator role when I need to. Once they start to get the idea, I step back to the coach role and just prompt when they're not quite doing it right. So this I've found to be a fantastic way to influence a team of programmers to learn test-driven development. I've got a note here that I don't normally drive. Driving is when you're on the keyboard. That's the easiest role in the mob because you don't have to think. You just have to type. And while you're concentrating on the typing and the IDE and stuff, you can't contribute in the same way to the discussions. So as a coach, I tend to skip that role because I always want to be able to talk, basically. But this is, maybe I'm wrong in this, maybe it's another way to do it would be better. I'm just saying this is my experience. So the other thing I do when I'm coaching test-driven development in an organization to help them to become more agile, more empowered, I will collaborate with other coaches. Some of those coaches will be technical coaches like me who are there to help the teams make better technical decisions. A lot of those coaches will be for the rest of the agile process, the product management, the development process. The more, I guess there's a lot of people doing this kind of coaching, you're probably familiar with it, where they lead retrospectives and make sure that stand-up meetings happen and that kind of thing. So I find that this coaching role as a technical leader is complementary to these other coaching roles, and you need to collaborate and coordinate so that you're all pulling the organization in the same direction. And this is helpful for everyone. The next thing that people ask, well, how much should the teams be mob programming? What should you tell them to do? And so when I come to a team and I want to use mob programming with them, I will ask them to give me 2 hours a day for about 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe 1. Well, maybe more than 2, actually, I would like more than 2. But at least 2 hours a day for 2 weeks. And then in that time, I think I can teach them to mob program. If they'll give me that time, then I think at the end of it, they'll know how to use the roles, when to speak, when to rotate, how to actually collaborate in this format. And once the teams have learnt to mob program, then I can really start to use that to help them to learn test-driven development or whatever else I need to do with them in the mob. So the thing is, what I would like to happen then is that they mob program some of the time when it's needed, the rest of the time, even when I'm not there. And some of the teams I've worked with have started to do this. They've continued to mob 2 hours a day, or they've even increased it, maybe, to half a day. I haven't yet had any team I've worked with decide to do it full-time, but I have had some to do it on demand, so that when they have a new team member, they might say, okay, we're going to mob for a week, now we've got a new team member, so they can get up to speed. And then we'll go back to working individually. So, but the thing is, as a technical leader, I can ask them to give me some time to teach them this technique, but then I have to step back and say, well, you're an empowered team now. Actually, it's you who get to decide how much of the time you mob program, and I would really like it if you would let me mob with you in the future. It has all these benefits, so hopefully they will do it. So that's what this slide says. We first learn to mob program, 2 hours a day with a coach, for about 2 weeks or so, and after that, the team decides. So what I want then is to have technical leaders be able to step into those mobs and coach them. The team is still empowered. I've got to get rid of this ivory tower and get that technical leader into the team here. So the technical coach is there to help the team, to influence their decisions, to observe the kitchen that they're working in, and try and mean that they can help them to have a better kitchen. So I said before that the factors influencing how agile you can be once you've decided what to build is how hard that thing is to build, how good skilled your developers are, and how good is their kitchen. And I've spoken a bit now about mob programming as a way to help you to improve the kitchen, or at least understand what to build. But the skill of the developers is really important here too. And I found that it helps to back up the mob sessions doing TDD in their code base using tasks from their normal task list or backlog. It helps to back that up with some code carters. So I've got here this book that I wrote a few years ago, which is all about learning TDD on code carters using a forum called the Coding Dojo. So when I wrote this, I was envisaging that teams would have a coding dojo as a kind of event that they would hold perhaps every 2 weeks or every week, maybe every month or something, spend 2 or 3 hours having a dojo, practicing some skills, and that this would be a good way to repeat exercises and learn it. So that's still a reasonable way to do it, but what I've been doing more recently is making the dojo basically shorter and doing it more frequently. I've been calling it Learning Hour. I invite all the teams who I'm mob programming with for 1 hour each day and get them to do code katas and to learn theory. And we talk about solid principles and the law of Demeter, and we do exercises and how to refactor horrible bits of code if that's the kind of code that they meet, but in an easy, safe environment where it's okay to fail. And then I generally get them working in pairs rather than a mob, because I think it's when it's an easy exercise, you learn more, I think, from tackling it in a pair than a mob. I could be wrong on that. It could be that mob programming in the learning hour would be great too. It's generally a bigger group because I've got 2 or 3 teams gathered, so we tend to work in pairs. So that's my latest thinking on the coding dojo, really. If you do it shorter and more often, it's more effective. And if you back it up with, and you do it together with mob programming in their production code with TDD. So this is my summary slide. It's about technical leadership in a world of empowered teams, and I'm thinking that the ivory tower architect really shouldn't exist in this environment. You need to be having empowered teams and technical leaders who work with many teams. And you need to care deeply about the kind of working environment the developers have. You need to care about the skills that they have and how they're learning and improving continually. We're knowledge workers. This is part of our job. We need to learn new skills. I recommend highly mob programming as a tool in the toolbox for a technical leader. And I think it's important that if you're coaching these techniques, then you also collaborate with the other coaches who are also coaching the rest of Agile. That is my talk. Thank you. No time for questions? Are there any questions? Just talk to me, Gwen. I'll repeat the question.
I usually go about and interview a whole bunch of people to get an idea of how to do that. But is this just a massive shortcut to it? Have I been wasting my time talking to people individually?
So the question is it a waste of time to go and interview lots of people to find out what they need instead of mob programming with them? I haven't really done what you're describing.
Oh, really?
Honestly. So I'm not sure. I found mob programming to be so much fun. It's much more fun than talking about writing software, actually writing software. So I recommend you try it.
Cool, thank you.
There's a question over here.
So thanks for that. So actually my question, you said that you wish to spend more time with the teams and to get more feedback and even more program with them. So do you suggest that you wished you would be just a programmer like anybody else and not a technical leader? And do we really need a technical leader actually?
Right. Well, do we really need technical leaders? I guess I've painted this picture of absolute chaos. If there's no leadership, of too many empowered teams working too independently, data fragmentation, lack of consistency, difficulty moving between products. There's a bunch of things that can go wrong if the teams have too much autonomy. And the technical leaders can make the idea is that you make a bigger difference by influencing many teams than you do by joining one. That's the trade-off you're making. Yep, I think we're probably done. Thank you.